Hello and welcome to another episode of The Closing Track, the official podcast of Another Ascending Lark, where music and the Christian worldview collide.
And just as it seems that the mages and the Templars will finally be able to negotiate peace through their massive, horrible, bloody war, an explosion occurs, tearing the veil that separates the Fade from Thedos, creating a massive breach in the sky where demons and spirits and all sorts of things continuously fall from it.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, you had the idea for the intro this week, and I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, you can do one and see what you do, and yours was definitely pretty epic.
Yeah, it's an epic game.
Yeah, it's actually a video game reference that I actually don't know enough to be able to reference. So, what are you referring to exactly?
Dragon Age Inquisition just came out this past week, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to play it that much. But when I have played of it, it's pretty incredible. Basically, for those of you who know the Dragon Age universe, there's been tension between the Templars, who are supposed to protect the mages, and the mages, where the Templars are getting more and more paranoid and starting to accuse even the innocent mages of being wicked. And so the mages and the Templars both separate from the Chantry, the main religion, and so now they're in a horrible, bloody conflict all throughout Thedos, the continent of Dragon Age. And just as Divine Justinia, basically the Pope of the Chantry, tries to bring them together, a blast occurs randomly and it kills everyone except for the main character that's there. And
Except for you.
yes, and there's and a lot of rifts, which basically tears in the veil, happen all across Thedos, but the biggest one, known as the Breach, is right there. And yeah, it's pretty serious.
Yeah. I mean, I literally have no idea what you just referenced, but that was definitely the nerdiest string of sentences you've contributed to the show yet.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely the video game anime-ish nerd of the show, and you're able to reference things that I have no idea what you're talking about.
And here's something funny I feel necessary to mention. Thedos, the way they got the name for that continent is originally, when they were making the game, they just called the Dragon Age setting, and they abbreviated by saying the DAS. They put it together as one word and said Thedos. So like, hey, that sounds cool. Let's just go with that.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Mac compatible to my knowledge, and I don't have the graphic end on my amazing computer to be able to support a game that is beautiful. I mean, I was watching you play it the other day, and I mean, it's pretty nice. I mean,
It is incredible.
as far as graphics go, which, I mean, I'm normally not one to care so much about the quality of the graphics. I just care about if it's a fun game. But it looks like it's got both on the package.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And this game also features, I think, about 40 different possible endings depending on what you do.
Choose your own adventure.
Basically, so each decision I make...
Choose your own adventure only if you don't like what you chose. You just can't flip back a couple of pages, find the page that you should have turned to, and kept on going.
Yeah, like one thing that kind of stinks is one aspect of it is the war table, where you have your various forces, your diplomats, your spies, and your army go and do different things. And I found out the hard way that it does matter which one you send. Like, my character is from a clan of elves off in the forest, and they wanted to know where I was if I was being held against my will by the Inquisition. And so it's like, hey, send someone there to assure them that you are, in fact, here of your own free will and that you're fine. And I chose to send my soldiers because that was the, least amount of time that it took. I got my report back, and my clan took the soldiers as a threat and immediately started fighting them. Massive casualties on both sides. Eventually the fighting stopped, though, and my clan was able to be convinced that I'm there of my own free will and that I'm fine. And I was like, but they're not helping us at all.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
My name is Austin. I am the head honcho of Another Ascending Lark. I'm the guy responsible for this whole thing, and I am the host who does not play computer games, but considers himself a classic gamer.
And I'm Brett, the other more handsomely bearded guy of this podcast, and I love video games of all kind, console, PC, just as long as it's not Xbox.
Yeah, the intern of the camp that must not be named made a comment about your beard. When I saw him yesterday, he said that your beard should look more like this other dude's beard, which your beard did look at one point in time, circa 2011. But I was like, Travis, it's not gonna happen. Like,
Wait, so what do you mean that I need to be shorter or?
basically, like your 2011 summer beard.
Well, I mean, I do plan on getting it trimmed up relatively soon. It is starting to get a little thin on the ends, but I'm unless I'm at a really good job that requires me to have a really small, clean cut beard, then I'm keeping the huge beard.
Yeah, keep it while you can, because the day is going to come when you don't get to have it anymore.
Who knows? Hopefully, I'll get to keep it.
Yeah, hopefully. If you want to contact us, you can get a hold of us on Facebook. You can search Another Ascending Lark and like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at AALblog. You can send us an email at anotherascendinglark@gmail.com. And of course, you can visit the website anotherascendinglark.com, where we post all of these show notes and post links to the articles that we talk about, as well as other goodies. We had an article published mid last week on some things Kenny Chesney said in the country music scene. So if you missed out on that, you can go check that out at anotherascendinglark.com. We have a great episode planned. We're gonna address a topic that we've been waiting to address, and we just felt like
Yep.
today was the day. Like, today was the day to start talking about this. But we're also going to have some of the most embarrassing reviews we'll ever have to do.
Why did we do this to ourselves?
I don't know
We
why
could
we-
have chosen not to do this.
We could have, but then again, I mean, it makes for great listening experience, I guess.
Mine was not great.
No, yours was, I mean, I felt truly bad for you. Mine was okay. I should not get ahead of myself. But we're not going to cover, we're only going to cover one significant news story. But, so what happened this week, Brett, as far as a milestone that we achieved?
We have now achieved over 600 downloads.
Actually, that's not true.
What do you mean?
I just I just pulled it up and looked at it, and we are at exactly 700.
Sweet.
So I mentioned in the last episode that we were, going to pass the 500 week mark, or the 500 stream mark in the first 3 months of the show, which I thought was a pretty good target point. And not only did we blow past the 500 mark, we blew past the 600, and we're now sitting at 700. That's like 200 streams in 1 week.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
The Tim Keller episode is now the most streamed episode that we've had. And guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to two guys just ramble on about music and theology and pop culture. It means a lot to us. I mean, I saw those numbers, and like my desire to make more of the best shows that we've done yet just kept on going. And so you guys are fueling why we do this. And so thank you guys for listening. And if you're a new listener coming back to listen after listening to last week's episode or a prior episode, thanks for sticking with us. We really do appreciate it. And we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear what you guys think about the show, and think about things that you like that we do, things that you don't like that we do, or things that you wish we did. If you have a suggestion or idea for us, hit us up. We want to hear from you, and we want to be able to talk to you. But other than that, thank you guys. I was blown away when I came home from work Tuesday night and pulled up the administration panel on the blog and saw this gigantic spike on the graphic chart, and it was 115 streams in 1 day. I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I didn't think that was something we'd ever wind up seeing.
At least not right away. I mean, that we're only due on episode 12. I mean, so that's pretty good so far. So again, thank you guys. That really means a lot to us, and thanks for listening. Now for some not so happy, joyful news. Bono. That'll just be the running joke, I guess, is I say Bono, you say Bono. Anyway, whatever his name was injured in a pretty bad cycling accident earlier last week, and the injuries are actually pretty bad. I mean, it says here on this USA Today article that the singer's serious injuries include a facial fracture involving the orbit of his eye, 3 separate fractures on his left shoulder blade and a fracture of his left humerus bone in his upper arm. I mean,
Ouch.
yeah, apparently injuring his arm in a cycling spill. It was a high energy bicycle accident when he attempted to avoid another rider. There's nothing there's nothing here about the condition of the other rider. He says it will require intensive and progressive therapy. However, a full recovery is expected. So at least he'll be recovering some point in time. It'll take a long time to recover from those extensive injuries. What sucks about that too, I mean, not just the accident, was that he was going to be taking over. U2 is taking over Jimmy Fallon's show for the whole week.
Yeah, I'd heard about that.
And then, like 2 days before that happened, or 2 days before they were going to do that, this happened, and so they had to call the whole thing off. I mean, that just sucks.
Yeah.
And then, just a couple of weeks ago, the rear door of the private plane that they were traveling in fell off as they were landing in Berlin. I mean,
Wow.
that's got to be terrifying. You're about to land, and the rear door just goes flying off.
At least it wasn't when they were like over the Atlantic Ocean or something.
Or at least it wasn't when you're Harrison Ford and the door of the Millennium Falcon falls on you and breaks your leg. At least Star Wars Episode 7 is finished filming. But other than that, there was really nothing too much newsworthy I felt like we needed to cover, and we got a big episode this week. So
let's do some reviews. Austin, what'd you listen to?
well, I'm going to do my first, not really a flashback because it came out 2 weeks ago, but not released this week either before I torture myself with the other one. Project 86 had their follow-up album, Knives to the Future, come out. It was one of my most anticipated releases of the whole year, and it definitely did not disappoint at all. Wait for the Siren, the 2012 hard rock album of the year for us, was an outstanding hard rock album, and it really came to my attention after the fact that both Disciple and Flyleaf had 2 really crappy albums come out that year. And Disciple's album was better this year, but Project 86 is unbelievably better this time around, unbelievably better than pretty much any other Christian hard rock band that's come out this year. If you're a fan of Project 86, you know that they have a very artistic approach, a very proggy approach to hard rock, and thankfully Knives to the Future is not any different. It's very diverse musically. It's got a real strong set of electronic influence throughout the album, but it also is a very straightforward hard rock album. The intro track is forgettable. I mean, it's a pretty short intro piece to Spirit of Shiloh, which Spirit of Shiloh is, just flashing lights, explosions, pyrotechnics galore. I mean, it's the song that kicks the album off on such a great note, and then it moves through Acolyte March and Knives to the Future, which they have a music video out for it, and I haven't seen yet. Son of Flame is the companion track to... I would forget that track from Wait for the Siren, where the last album it was about his daughter, and Son of Flame is about his son. Ambiguous and Genosha are 2 of the highlights, and probably 2 of my favorite Project 86 songs of all time. Ambiguous got a great hook to it. Genosha is fierce and has a great chorus with really deep subject matter. But it's when you get to the end of the album, White Capstone and Oculus. White Capstone by itself is great. Is a really beautiful song, has a real nice use of some really delay heavy guitars and a real nice ambient electronic sound for most of it. But then you get to Oculus. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's one of the best ending tracks I've heard in a long time. One of the most epic, one of the most climatic, one of the most, you've waited for this moment to come, and this moment is here, and this moment is awesome, and holy crap, this moment is great endings. Outstanding songwriting, outstanding lyrics, outstanding closing. You get to the end of it, and you're just sitting still. Your spine is shivering just because of how powerful of a song it is when you get to the end of it. And it ends, and then just when you think it's about to end on the aggressive guitar note, a piano outro ends the album for about a minute, and I mean, oh my gosh, I mean, I was just paralyzed when I first heard it. It's one of the most epic endings I've heard all year. Yeah, the ending definitely makes it worth it for a whole entire listen through. There are a couple of weak points on the album, though. Pale Rider, I thought, had a little bit of a generic electronic chorus to it with a little bit of gang vocal work that you've heard before. And again, the intro track is a little bit forgettable, and it's got some moments where the consistency is a little leaves a little bit to be desired. Son of Flame and White Capstone are really the only two slow songs on the album, and so it moves at a brisk pace. But when Son of Flame hits and White Capstone hits, it feels like you're slamming on the brakes a little too hard. So other than that, this was definitely one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and it definitely did not disappoint. I was looking forward to this, and they did an outstanding job. It's probably my favorite Project 86 album, at least at the moment. It has also an outstanding album cover. I've never really been a big fan of Project 86's album artwork, but this one is beautiful. Great coloring, great detail, great theme, and really just a great image for the album. So if I were to pin this, I would probably pin it at about an 8.5. I would have pinned it at a 9 if Pale Rider and the intro were a little bit different. But even then, this is a great hard rock album. If you are a fan of hard rock that's got a lot of intelligence and a lot of thoughtfulness behind it, even with some of the weaker points on the album, like they definitely put a ton of thought and a ton of attention and a ton of detail into this. The guitar work, especially on this album, is very, very intricate, not stereotypical for the hard rock scene. So yeah, it's a great release, and it's the only release that we're going to talk about on this week's episode that's actually something we want to talk about. So, Brett, what are you going to talk about?
Unfortunately, I'm going to talk about Nickelback's No Fixed Address.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing this to ourselves.
Me either, but I mean, it's kind of my fault because I heard one of the singles off the album and I thought, hey, this actually sounds decent. Maybe they have, something to say with this album. And the first track is Million Miles an Hour, which is, it's very mediocre. It's not horrible, but it's very repetitive. Then you get to Edge of a Revolution, which actually does sound promising. I will give them that. It's got really good riffs in it, good vocals, and even the lyrics are pretty good.
For Nickelback?
For Nickelback, yes. Basically,
impossible.
Like, just one line I remember from it is like, hey, hey, just obey, your secret's safe with the NSA, and God we trust, or the CIA, standing on the edge of a revolution. Which I'm like, okay, it's not like the greatest, most deepest lyrics for any governmental conspiracy thing ever.
That's catchy.
Yeah, it's not bad. But one thing that kind of confuses me is they're referencing the CIA and the NSA, and they're Canadian. So, for a while, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is interesting. I'm like, wait, what the heck do you know about these things? You're Canadian.
Why does the CIA matter to you? You live up north. Not to insult any of our Canadian listeners, but y'all don't have to deal with the CIA.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just that there's, no problems ever in Canada except for maybe a hockey team losing or not having enough maple syrup, so they have to talk about American problems.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Canada's never listening to us again.
Never again, and then the third track, What Are You Waiting For? The music-wise, it's okay, but it's completely full of incredibly cliche lines.
Well, it's got a super cliche title. Come on.
Basically just go out there, live your life, sort of cliche stuff. So, the music-wise, that's really the only thing that has it going for. And then She Keeps Me Up is a very interesting song because they actually have sort of a funky vibe to it. And, the chorus is repetitive, but I was like, hey, this is really interesting. You're going off here. You're experimenting with your sound. Good for you, Nickelback. Let's see what else you have to play. And the rest of the album was as if all of the band members took turns taking dumps on their microphones. And then for track 10, Flo Rida also took a dump on a microphone.
Commercially, this album was projected to bomb, and critically, this album has gotten very, very bad reception in this secular press.
I've heard other Nickelback albums, and they'll have 2 or 3 singles that are either good or decent, and the rest of it will be kind of blah. but my gosh, this was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, Nickelback is a radio band. I mean, they're a band that thrives on radio singles. That's where they get their drive. That's where they get their money. That's where they get their listenership. So it makes sense that they would have, a couple of radio primed cuts here on the album, and then the rest of it be like crap because that's what they are. They're a radio band, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But it doesn't shield your work from being criticized either.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of it, I mean, not really so much cliche like what are you waiting for, but incredibly repetitive, musically incredibly repetitive. It was kind of hard sometimes to tell when one song was actually going to another one because they all sounded
Exactly the same.
yeah, and then Got Me Running Round, it's another song they sort of tried the funky vibe like She Keeps Me Up, but it just didn't work. And then when Flo Rida came in and started rapping, I was like,
Yeah,
ew.
the
I was like,
whole-
what the heck?
Yeah, the whole like rappers coming in and doing like rap bridges, like I'm not against it, but I've yet to really see it be done well.
I mean, can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know I have heard it done at least decently. I mean, mainly because most of the song actually has a vibe that could be sung to or rapped to.
It's not.
So it feels natural. But this, I mean, has sort of one of those funky things going on with sort of, I mean, semi reggae sounding riffs. And then you have Flo Rida coming in and rapping. And it's not one of those like groove slow raps. It's like a fast, hard one. I'm just like, what? I'm like,
I can't even. I just
do
can't
you even music?
do you even music? I'm sure Nickelback would be like, yeah, well, we are like one of the most, recognized brands ever, and you're not.
And they're incredibly rich.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, there are bands now called Creedlebacks partially because of Nickelback.
what?
A Creedleback is a band that basically just tries to copy Creed and or Nickelback.
Well, okay, I knew about Creed. I knew about Creed, and I mean, I guess it makes sense that some bands would try to do that for Nickelback, but
I mean, Creed and Nickelback do have similar sounds. They're not the same, but I mean, if you combine them, then you have like an incredibly stereotypical sounding band, and that is known as a Creedleback.
I don't know how that slipped my attention. Like, I mean, I don't dislike Creed, but I mean, I'm also not the biggest fan of Creed either, except for Full Circle. Full Circle as an album was a really, really solid comeback album. It had a lot of really deep lyrics to it and some real good stuff. But yeah, I'm not a Creed fan, or definitely not a Nickelback fan. So, what would you pin this at, Sir Brett?
Well, I was gonna say a 4, but I mean, with the experimentation they did, and you're actually sort of trying to get out, they even threw in some electronics every now and then. I'm gonna probably say 4.5. I mean, I do applaud Nickelback for trying to get out there and expand the music and figure out a new sound, but I mean, they didn't do it that much in the album at all.
Is there a difference between like a band like trying to push their sound forward, or versus like having like a funky / reggae song just as a gimmick?
I mean, and part of me wants to say it was a gimmick, but the way She Keeps Me Up was done, I'm like, okay, this one is actually good. Or not good, but decent. Like what they did,
Relative to the rest of the
yeah,
album.
relative to the rest of the album, it was good. I mean, it wasn't bad at all. But I don't know if that was mainly for a gimmick or if they were legitimately trying to artistically stretch themselves. But either way, I do applaud at least that. So 4.5, not 4.
Oh, you're generous. You're showing some mercy to the fact that they tried to push themselves and you didn't keep them at the abysmally low 4.
Yeah,
I mean, so we're gonna listen to that on the way to a community group tonight.
absolutely not. Let's listen to your album instead,
Oh my gosh.
especially track number 5.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I listened to the deluxe edition of One Direction's new album 4.
I'm sorry.
I no, you're sorry for what I'm about to say. Okay, I'm just gonna start the review out because I don't want to review this, but I'm like, okay, this is a popular album, what the heck? Why not cover it? Musically, this is actually not that bad.
You're fired.
It's my own show, dude. I can't fire myself.
I'm firing you. Citizens firing.
I'm being I'm trying to be objective here. Like, objectively, as much as I hate One Direction, this was not all that bad musically. And I'm not talking about lyrically. I'm not talking about the lyrics yet. I'm talking about the music. Musically, this is actually a very mature, very well done. You hear the strain in my voice, like voicing out these positive words towards a One Direction album.
This sounds very painful to me.
I would love to be able to say this album is garbage and you shouldn't listen to it, but musically I can't. Yeah, you have some U2 vibes throughout the album. You have some Bruce Springsteen vibes throughout the album. You have one song, I think it is Where Do Broken Hearts Go, that's got a piano riff in it that's very similar to a bunch of Journey riffs. There's a strong classic rock vibe throughout this album, and it's done well. I'm sorry, it's not that bad. Especially, I want to point out Ready to Run. When I was listening to this album on the way to work a couple days ago, the second track, Ready to Run, came on. And at first I thought my radio had switched to FM 90 because, there's no turning back now. I've already dug the hole deep enough for nobody to ever take me seriously again. I thought, oh my gosh, if I didn't know this was a One Direction song, this song could be played on an indie rock station and people would probably love it. I'm sorry. I don't want to say that, but I have to. It's not bad. And then especially you get to the deluxe edition tracks, and they're really solid tracks. Act My Age has an Irish rock vibe to it. That's actually not the worst thing ever. And you do have some songs. You do have some songs that some of the more upbeat songs that do ride the you don't know you're beautiful sort of vibe that do sound a little bit familiar to their radio stuff. And so they're a radio band too, and so their stuff is also primed to radio, and some of their songs do sound a little bit similar to each other. But there's some really good acoustic guitar work in a couple of songs. Fool's Gold, even though the lyrics are garbage, have had some really good guitar work in it. And okay, I've said enough about the music. Lyrically, okay, let's talk about the lyrics. Lyrically, this album is about as deep as a piece of paper. This album does not say anything profound, anything substantive, anything praiseworthy worth focusing on. The only thing that this album has going for it is that it's a talking point for me to be able to point to it and say that this is completely antithetical to the Christian ethic when it comes to guys dealing with women.
I especially want to know what you think about track number 5 called Girl Almighty.
Track number 5, Girl Almighty. The title is pretty straightforward about what the song is about. And there is various idolatry-ish statements made throughout the whole entire album, where I think it was in the first song, don't quote me on this, I think it was in the first song where one of the guys says, I don't exist without you.
Wow.
And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? There's nothing even remotely mature about these songs lyrically. There's no language. There's nothing graphic, like sexually graphic. It is aimed for the teen audience, and so that's partially part of the problem. Fool's Gold, Fool's Gold as an example, is a song where the guy's basically like, yeah, I know you were using me, but I don't regret falling for you. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? You don't regret, you know that she's using you, but you don't regret falling for her. I was like, oh my gosh. And then it gets to track number 13, which is the first track on the deluxe edition. It ends, the regular edition ends on track 12. Track number 13, Change Your Ticket, opens up with Come On Girl, Stay in Bed With Me.
Wow.
Yeah. And basically talks about how he's alone in this small town. Girl, don't leave this hotel room with me. It's just substantively about as thick as a piece of paper. And is it well written? In some places, yes. In some places, no. Content-wise, it's garbage. There's really nothing. The only song that I would even offer any remote amount of praise lyrically would be Act My Age. We're basically talking when I get older, old and gray, whatever, I'm not going to act like an old person. I'm going to act like we were when we were young, and I'm still going to love you like that. And I'm like,
Okay, that's
okay,
decent.
fine. You have you have one check mark on an album full of X's, and
I just have to ask, the title sticks out to me. What about, like, number 11, Stockholm Syndrome?
well, it's kind
That
of
sounds horrible.
yeah. I mean, it's about it's kind of in the similar vein lyrically of Fool's Gold. I think it might have taken a little bit of an opposite slant. I don't really remember all that much lyrically from that one. It was catchy though. I was definitely catchy musically, but musically this isn't bad. I hate to say that, and it's on the record, and it's going to go on the internet, and everybody's going to know that I didn't totally diss a One Direction album, but I can't. It's not that bad. If I were to pin it, I would pin the standard edition, tracks 1 through 12, the standard edition. I would probably pin that at a 5. And if it were the deluxe edition, I would pin it at a 6. Because the 4 tracks that come with the deluxe edition, they're not B-sides, they're not covers, they're not demos. I mean, they are solid, complete tracks in their own right. And they do add a lot to the album. So if you're looking to buy this album, and God bless you if you are, you should go for the deluxe edition because your taste in One Direction ought to cost you more money.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. So I would pin the deluxe edition at a 6, which is me being generous and me having to, there's a price you have to pay when you stress trying to be objective when you evaluate music. Eventually something like this comes along where you have to pay a price to be objective, where you could be a totally subjective critic like a lot of critics are and just say, oh, it's One Direction, they suck, I don't like the album, it's terrible, the end. Or you can, try to be an objective critic and listen to the music and evaluate it for what it is. And there are times it costs you. It's I can't believe I just said all those things. Ugh. Brett, what's coming up next week?
Next week we have the Modern Post's Lowborn King EP.
Which that is one of Dustin Kinsrue's projects.
And we have Circus Survive's Decensus, Pitbull's Globalization.
Yeah. No, not really.
Soundgarden's Echoes of Miles Scattered Across the Path, which I think I'll be taking Soundgarden.
No, I totally have Soundgarden. We totally both have Soundgarden.
Okay,
Wait,
fine.
you won't be here next week.
True. In that case, I'll just take the next one, Eminem's Shady 15.
Oh, I didn't tell you last night. He put out a 66-track free mixtape.
Is that what this is?
No, that's not what that is, but like totally separate free 66-track download.
Interesting.
And I downloaded it last night. Didn't listen to any of it, but
But yeah, as Austin referenced, I won't be here next week. Instead, a good friend of ours, Aaron, will possibly be taking my place. I will be at home celebrating Thanksgiving with family because my job won't let me take Thanksgiving off.
dude, I feel so bad for you. Like,
And
I feel truly bad for you.
Thanksgiving Day, it's just me and one client because the other 5 in his house are being taken in by their families. And
well, that's-
basically, I'll take him to Furs, eat with him, take him back. Because it's one of those things where every client that's there goes to First for Thanksgiving lunch.
Ew.
Yeah, I'm like, at least Golden Corral.
Well, Golden Corral, at least Amarillo's Golden Corral isn't really much better, but ew, furs. Ugh.
Yeah, and
Take them to, I don't know.
and the worst part of it is I'm going to have to drive the long van for one person.
That's funny. Like, okay, I mean, I drive a work van for my job, and I've gotten used to it, but
And you also have like a lot of stuff in your van.
Yeah, my
like, there's
van
like a legitimate reason for you to be driving that.
yeah, but I mean, well, your client is, isn't he like physically disabled, and so
Yeah, this particular for houses for this one it's different. We don't get assigned the same clients we do in the day program. We just get assigned a house.
oh, okay,
And the house I'm getting, we'll just have one person there, most likely an older guy who, I mean, yeah, he's kind of physically disabled. He can walk on his own a little bit, but you kind of have to help hold him up.
okay. Well, I mean, as long as, I mean, I guess it could be worse.
Yeah.
I mean, never
And then
mind.
the next day, pretty much everyone's going to be back, and so it'll be me and 2 other people
The good thing
as
about
staff.
yeah, but the good thing about you working on Black Friday is that you don't have to brave the roads. Which okay, Amarillo isn't all that bad, at least in the morning, but mid afternoon it starts to get a little hectic.
Yeah.
We did Black Friday shopping last year. We went to Guitar Center, and I might go again just to pick up a couple more things if they have some doorbusters. But
Yeah, the only Black Friday I ever participated in was to get my GameCube.
then that was worth it.
Yeah, and basically what had happened is the plan was for me to save up money, buy a GameCube, and then ask for GameCube games for Christmas because I would have enough money around Christmas.
Right.
Well, my mom pointed out, hey, this Black Friday, there's, a GameCube for how much money you have now, plus the Legend of Zelda bonus disc. I
Which
was like,
that's a steal.
yeah, I mean, and the Legend of Zelda bonus disc, I played the heck out of that thing, and I still want to play some more of it. But anyways, I get there, I'm like 200 people to the cash register. Person in front of me says, man, like what's wrong? He's like, look at that. There's a new line opening up. Now people are going in there just waiting behind two other people, and here we are waiting for hours. I didn't say anything. I'm in junior high right now. I didn't say anything to this grown man who should have some common sense. Instead, I thought, are you really that stupid? And then I walked out of the line and wound up being fourth in this new line. It took like 2 minutes to go through it. Can I have a GameCube? Sure, here you go. Bye.
And the rest was history.
Yep, and the rest was history.
All right. Okay, so let's get into the main course. Put on your thinking caps and get ready to pump some iron with your brain because we are going to discuss the always controversial question: does Christian music exist? Oh, we've been waiting to do this one for a long time.
People are going to hate us for this.
Oh, well, some already hate us anyway
Yeah.
for our views on this subject. This episode is going to be pretty philosophy heavy, and while we're going to try to explain things as basic as we can, we will occasionally throw in some big words or throw in out some big ideas. And if any of this, anything we say is confusing or you need some clarification on it, just hit us up and we'll explain to you what it is that you need some clarification on, or answer any questions that you might have. Or if you totally think you're wrong and you want to tell us that we're wrong and tell us why we're wrong, we'll listen to you. We will definitely listen to you and talk back and forth with you. But we wanted to do this eventually episode because we wanted to be able to point back to this episode when the question arises, so that way we can just deal with the subject once and for all, or at least for a little bit. But let's just get the pragmatic issue out of the way, because I mean, even when I was thinking like, why would we do an episode on this? I'm sure the question was going to be like, why does it matter if Christian music doesn't exist or not? I mean, we've had that come our way. Like, who cares? Like the who cares if it exists or doesn't?
And usually it comes after we've
Exhausted
our arguments. Then it's, well, who cares anyway? It doesn't matter, so I can just say this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, exactly. So we're just going to get the pragmatic part of this, like, out of the way from the get-go, if you're wondering why this matters. There are several reasons why this question matters, and I think probably the most important reason is that it pertains to discipleship, and it pertains to the legalism that often comes with the idea of Christian music. Basically, if discipleship is being done correctly, the subject of music will come up, and there really, at least on this issue, there hasn't been much discipleship being done apart from the two extremes you have on one end, listen only to Christian music, or you have the antinomianism on the other side where, just listen to whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And neither of those are true. Like,
Not at all.
Like, neither of those are true. And so rather than disciple believers on what music is and what good music is, and how to glorify God when it comes to the music we listen to and what music we extol, there's this category called Christian music that's often used as like this legalistic hammer to encourage Christians to only listen to that type of music. I mean, we've had to deal with the brunt of that quite a bit.
Especially on various mission trips.
I was thinking the exact same thing. And if Christian music doesn't exist, then anyone who tries to tell you to listen to something that doesn't exist, it just kind of loses authority and just kind of loses point. And also, if it doesn't exist, basically the issue of Christian music, even if it's not a legalistic thing in of itself, it's often used in legalistic ways. That does short circuit the discipleship process on how to encourage Christians to interact with music. We don't move closer to a God of truth through a falsehood, no matter how practical or well-meaning that falsehood might be. Even if it's something as, relatively, I guess, harmless. I mean, I guess harmless would be one word for
Yeah,
it.
relatively. I mean, if just the concept alone, it doesn't really do much except have a false view on someone.
Yeah, the concept itself is relatively harmless, but it's often a tool for things, and it causes some problems. And rather than I guess like make good disciples when it comes to the music issue for the Christian, like just saying it's just so much easier to say, just listen to Christian music only, stay away from secular music, than it is to, explain what music is and explain what good music is and explain what music Christians ought to be listening to. And, it's just easier to say, hey, listen to these artists. If they're a Christian artist, you can listen to them. If they're not, then no.
Which is ridiculous.
Which is ridiculous, especially nowadays where you have a lot of artists who are blending the lines a little bit, like Lecrae. Lecrae would be a pretty patent example of that.
And then on the other end, you have bands like Family Force 5, which they're Christian bands, but you listen to them and it's like, well, most of your songs don't really mention Christ at all.
Yeah, you have Anne Boleyn. You have some people didn't know Flyleaf was or is a Christian band.
And then there's Evanescence, where everyone thought they were a Christian band, but they weren't.
And then there's Evanescence, where when they released Fallen? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, I think so.
Fallen. And Fallen gets picked up and distributed in Christian bookstores and Christian distributing circles. And Evanescence sees that the album is doing extremely well in the Christian market, and they're like, what the F? Like, what is this doing here?
Yeah.
And it was embarrassing, and it was awkward
for everyone.
And also like the whole Christian music thing, like, okay, like talking like that, the question always comes up, oh, are they a Christian band? And while there is some distinction, like there's definitely a difference when it comes to a Christian band, usually those questions are tied into, oh, well, Christian bands play Christian music, and I don't want to listen to Christian music, and so if that's what they play, I'm not going to listen to them. So I mean, it brings up a lot of things that I think it's worth talking about if we are going to collide the Christian worldview with music. I mean, what more foundational subject than whether or not Christian music exists or not?
Yeah. And I mean, one thing, getting back to what you said about someone saying, oh, the Christian band plays Christian music, I don't want to listen to it. A lot of times we hear in Christian circles, this Christian music is good. These blah, blah, blah artists, which I won't mention right now, they're good because they're getting the word of God out there to the non-believers. And I think I mentioned this in the first episode. A Satanist isn't going to walk into Lifeway and ask for some music. That's not going to happen.
That might happen if the Holy Spirit is doing something.
Yeah,
but if the Holy Spirit isn't doing anything, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, most people who aren't Christians aren't going to want to listen to something labeled as Christian music. They're like, this isn't for me. This is for someone else.
Yeah, which is a shame because oftentimes, in certain circumstances, those bands might be bands that they would otherwise enjoy. Theocracy. But they're so hung up on the label that the label kills whatever interest that they otherwise might have. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with one of my kiddos at church, and he was telling me how his dad's a big death metal fan, and so I was recommending, maybe your dad would, check out Solomors and Becoming the Archetype, and just threw out a couple other death metal bands. Two of them were definitely, pretty straightforward Christian bands, and he asked me, do any of them play Christian music? And I'm like, well, they are Christian bands, but I mean, at that point it was like, oh well, if they're Christian bands, my dad's not gonna want to listen to them. And I was like, okay, but they're
good.
They're good. I mean, if you want good death metal, you should go listen to them. And I mean, it's stuff like that. It's an everyday conversation. And it's an everyday conversation that it just isn't being done well. So we're going to look at 3 arguments. We're going to look at 2 arguments against Christian music, and then we're going to look at an argument for Christian music. I'm going to take, in addition to explaining the arguments, When it comes to the third one in particular, I'm going to be the one advocating the argument, and Brett's going to be the one trying to defeat the argument. So we might have a little bit of a back and forth there on it, but we're going to do 3 arguments. I call the first one the argument from definition, the second one the argument from Christian, and then the third one the argument from purpose. So let's dive in. The argument from definition. Okay, we briefly touched on that, a couple episodes ago? Like, I think it was when we were talking about the Christian label, right?
Yeah, with Lecrae.
Yeah. Was it Lecrae or was it, well, no, it was Lecrae. Yeah, the label episode.
Yeah.
We didn't really get to flesh it out, like, too terribly much. And basically, this argument looks at the definition of the word music to see if the word Christian can be juxtaposed to it. So my grammar friend here will probably have a lot to say on this because we're talking about words modifying things.
Yes.
Which, if you remember from elementary school, what are those called?
Words modifying something. You're going to have to be a bit more specific because different words that modify different things
Point proven.
have different definitions.
Point proven.
Like adverbs, adjectives, pronouns can all be considered doing that kind of stuff.
Well, in this particular case, it's an adjective.
Okay.
And I like this argument, and this is the argument that I personally use that, Brett, you use this one? Yes?
Possibly.
Have you used this one?
Possibly. Depends on when you're talking about it.
Like, in everyday conversation. Like, have you pointed out this argument to anyone?
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was going for. And this also is the argument that Another Ascending Lark endorses. So this is the official position of Another Ascending Lark as a whole. So, yeah, if you're going to interact with anything, interact with this one. I like this argument because it gives us a starting point for talking about music. And there might be a word no less loaded in society than the word music. I mean, everybody's got their thought on what the word music means. And when you're having a conversation and they bring it to the table and people don't understand each other because they're working from like 2 completely different semantic viewpoints.
Yeah, and people can get pretty emotional about it too.
Yeah, I mean,
like a lot of times I see on Facebook those "without music, life is meaningless" posts.
oh my gosh, idolatry much?
Yeah, idolatry much.
Idolatry much? And so
Without you, I don't exist.
One Direction. Why? And so with this argument, we have to like start literally at square one. Like we literally have to look at the word music and what music is and go from there, which oftentimes we just assume some definition of music and we try to have these really messy discussions about music without having our terms and words defined, which for casual conversation is okay, but if you want to have a serious discussion on the matter, I mean, we've had people talk with us who we asked them to define music, and what the answer that they give us is like on a whole different galaxy than what we're working from. And so it's like, well, no wonder we're talking past each other's heads. Our starting points are 2 totally different places. Let's get on the same starting point and let's work from there. So 3 steps. Okay. The first step is to ask the question, what is the definition of music? I don't think that's hard for anyone to do, to ask, hey, what's the definition of music? I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to ask that question. Well, okay, maybe you do, but most introductory texts to music theory and dictionaries have some kind of form of this definition, and this particular one is taken verbatim from dictionary.com. Music is an art of sound in time that expresses ideas and emotions in significant forms through the elements of rhythm, melody, harmony, and tone color. Okay, I'm gonna read that one more time. Music is an art of sound and time that expresses ideas and emotions in significant forms through the elements of rhythm, melody, harmony, and tone color. Okay, so 4 things: rhythm, melody, harmony, tone color. Voila, you have music. I mean,
that's a very
that's not
basic,
hard.
easy to understand definition.
Yeah, that's not super hard to figure out or understand. And then the next question, once you have that definition, is to see if any of those 4 elements are capable of propositional content. Brett, which one of those things will tell you about the gospel?
Well, maybe harmony could tell you about the harmony of the Gospels.
Wow. That's great.
No, seriously, though, none of them. Absolutely none of them. Because despite the famous unfortunately famous quote, preach the gospel at all times, use words if necessary. The gospel is words.
Yeah, the gospel is words.
Saying that is like saying, give me your phone number, use numbers if necessary.
Yeah, I mean yeah, I mean none of those things will actually communicate, that Jesus is Lord or Satan is awesome or
Or My Little Pony is a great show.
Or yeah, I was about to say My Little Pony. On behalf of you, since you've gone several episodes without making a reference.
Yay.
So the definition of music does not allow for propositional content. Does not allow for communicating anything. It definitely communicates emotion. Like music without lyrics definitely communicates quite a bit of emotion, but none of them will tell you, whether or not Christ is Lord, whether Satan is awesome, or whether without you I don't exist.
Yeah.
We'll just use that one through the rest of the episode. Okay, so lyrics. Lyrics are propositional.
Lyrics are very propositional.
Lyrics tell you things. Lyrics can be Christian, can be secular, can be satanic, can be broniest,
Yeah.
whatever. What are, like, English major, what are lyrics, like, essentially?
Lyrics is basically a style of poetry.
Okay, so
on
what?
a very basic format.
Okay, so it's a real, like, simple format of poetry. Is poetry music?
Absolutely not.
Okay, glad we established that. So lyrics can be propositional. Yes, lyrics are definitely things. They definitely communicate things. Can you have music without lyrics?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, any survey through classical music, plenty of excellent stuff that doesn't have lyrics. So, what about the phrase Christian music then? Is it a valid phrase?
Since melody, rhythm, harmony, and tone color can't convey any Christian ethics, Christian values, Christian message, no.
Yes.
Absolutely not.
Because lyrics are not included in the definition of the word music. Lyrics are separate and technically optional for music. If you don't have melody, you don't have music. If you don't have tone color, you don't have music. But you can have music without lyrics, and that's why it's optional, and that's why it's not included in the definition. So the word Christian is a propositionally loaded word. I mean, it's communicating a pretty specific set of ideas and truths, and it's stuck as an adjective to the word music. So a propositional word is trying to modify something that is not propositional. That's a mistake.
That is a linguistic impossibility.
It's a linguistic impossibility, but it's basically a category error. It's basically just a misunderstanding of what music is and understanding where we get the propositional things of music. We get those from lyrics, and lyrics are not part of the definition of music. Therefore, Christian music technically doesn't exist because the definition of music does not allow for the communication of Christian propositional content. Those are the lyrics, which are separate and attached to music, but is not the same thing.
For one thing, I feel like I do need to mention, as Austin mentioned earlier, which I do affirm, there is a such thing as a Christian band, but really that mainly just is an adjective that can be attached to the members. Do the members themselves follow and believe the gospel? If they do, then they're a Christian band because it's a gathering of Christians.
Okay, let's
a
do
band
it.
of Christians.
Yeah, let's do a comparison of that. Okay, so what is a band? Like, what is a band?
Very basic format. A band is a group of people.
Okay, a group of people. What are they grouping around? I mean, what they have to group around something, right? Can that something be propositional?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, like there's band of brothers grouping around being soldiers. You can have a band of motorcycle enthusiasts, a band of live action role players, a band of musicians.
Yeah, I mean, so the word band is we say we're not hypocritical in affirming that Christian bands exist and Christian music doesn't, because Christian bands are groups of people who are organizing around doing something, and they're doing something with the propositional intent of Christianity. So the word Christian can go there because there's something to modify what they're organizing around.
Definitely.
Okay. So there is one objection to this argument, and this actually is a really potent objection. We're not going to go too into it just because it's really heady. But the voice, okay? One critique against this argument is that arguments or the lyrics are on paper don't take musical properties, but when you're singing lyrics, they definitely have musical properties and propositional content simultaneously. There's a fusion that's going on there when the lyrics are sung. Therefore, does Christian music exist at that moment? Again, this is actually a pretty substantial objection. And I honestly don't have a good answer for it because because it's a very heady objection and it deals with a lot of philosophy that I think is really beyond the scope of this particular episode. It is a legitimate objection, and it's one that has a little bit of force, but I'm not convinced by it. I don't think I don't find that objection to be a defeater for the argument or convinces me that the argument is unsound. So we might visit that particular objection later on. The next one, the next one, the argument from the word Christian. John Foreman of Switchfoot kind of popularized this a while back when he wrote that one post on why Switchfoot doesn't sing Christian songs, and you would have thought that like it was the end of the internet. Gosh.
Oh my gosh, people freaked out so
It's
much.
like they don't sing Christian songs. Oh, we gotta say something. Let's totally not read the article and read what he has to say, and let's just let him know how he's wrong.
Yeah, because in the days of the internet, people that just read the article title, like, oh my gosh, so many people thought Betty White was dead because they didn't understand the difference between die, D-I-E, and die, D-Y-E.
That is an indictment on the state of American education when it comes to basic words. I mean, come on.
I mean, I was just like, why are people this stupid? Why? Why? Why can't people at least have some semblance of intelligence in this world?
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Not at all.
Okay, basically, this argument looks at the word Christian itself and just kind of asks, like, what is a Christian? We kind of talked about this too on the label episode that the word Christian was given to the disciples at Antioch in the book of Acts because they were imitating Christ. Christ died on the cross for their salvation, and as a result of denying themselves, taking up their crosses, and following Christ, which is what Christ commands his followers to do, the word Christian was bestowed upon them. Can music do that?
No.
I mean, it's a real kind of simple objection. But John Foreman raised up that Jesus didn't die for any of his songs. Therefore, his songs aren't Christian. And I mean, it's a real simple line of argument, but it's got a lot of force to it because it throws the word Christian around in ways, or it's applying the word Christian to something that can't really be Christian. Because to be a Christian, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Christ. Live as an imitation of Christ, empowered by the Holy Spirit to the glory of God the Father. To be a Christian requires you to do things of your renewed, raised to life volition and will, and music can't do that. Therefore, music is not there. Christian music doesn't exist. And while I think there's some truth to this argument, it does have a pretty bad side effect. This would make the phrases Christian literature, Christian films, Christian theology category errors as well, because none of those things deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow Christ.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, if there is a book that instructs people how to do that, then it basically, I mean, in a roundabout way, it basically is sort of doing that. The argument behind it is denying yourself daily and taking up the cross daily.
Maybe, and that might be where the truth of the argument is. It's an interesting little argument. I don't necessarily endorse the argument just because I think there are some objections to it, and this is probably the best one that I've heard against it. And so I mention it because it is something to think about. I mean, what are we sticking the word Christian in front of, and how are we using the word? A potential defeater for this argument is that it walks the line of equivocating the word Christian, which, I mean, fallacy of equivocation. It's like,
Yep.
My coworker called me. He's like, Austin, what's your favorite phrase that you always like to use at me? And I'm like, fallacy of equivocation? He's like, yeah, that word. Let's go eat at Gaddy's. And I was like, okay.
That's kind of weird.
Random. Okay, we're running a little short on time, so we'll try not to spend too much time on this one. The argument from purpose. Okay, this is an argument for Christian music. The last two have not been arguments for Christian music. This one is an argument for Christian music. It's not an argument that I haven't heard made outside of the academic setting. And really, it's not even an argument that's being consciously made, but it is something that I stumbled upon in one of my classes a couple years ago, and remains a powerfully convincing argument, even if it's got some weaknesses present day. The argument is based on the historical classifications of sacred music and secular music, where sacred music was music written for and performed in the church or for other religious occasions, while secular music was for everyday listening and performance without religious connotations. So the designation here is not on content but on purpose, and that songs back in the day were written for worship services, for funerals, for weddings, for religious settings, and then there were songs that were written for folk songs or pop songs for everyday life or for everyday celebrations or for pub songs and drinking your favorite pint to. Brett's raising the roof over there. So looking over the development of music throughout history, this is a legitimate way to understand musical development. I mean, this is a legitimate way of understanding the development of music throughout the centuries.
But one thing I'd have to say with this, according to this definition, is the song "O Come Emmanuel" a Christian song?
You're getting a little bit ahead of me, but I'll answer it. Yes.
And regardless of when it's played, is it still a Christian song?
Yes. Which you're getting a little bit ahead of where I'm at, but you're hitting on a weakness of this argument. You're hitting it.
And even when played at the Grammys with Nicki Minaj's demonic performance, is that still a Christian song?
Because the purpose of the song was originally for the service of the church, and it was hijacked for other purposes. Ontologically, yes.
So basically, Nicki Minaj did a performance to Christian music.
Well, I mean,
I'm uncomfortable with that feeling. With that statement.
Well, even if this argument isn't true, I mean, she did take a Christian song.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I mean, she did take a song with Christian lyrics and everything, but even without given the context, it was twisted to be darker, to be more demonic. But if this argument is true, and if this argument holds up, then basically she was just using a Christian song. That song was Christian, and it is no matter what context it's put in, which I do not agree with.
Well, I would say that regardless of the context, the song is a Christian song. When she was playing, I totally just blanked on the name of the song. When she was playing that song as a part of her performance on the Grammys, that song was a Christian song that she had taken the lyrics of that song and hijacked it for her own purpose. But the content of the song, I would still say, is an inherently Christian song, just because the word Emmanuel is an explicitly Christian term.
Yeah,
I mean, no other religion claims that.
The lyrics, yes, but I mean, at least because I'm kind of interested in a lot of the sort of things about like demons and anything paranormal and how it might affect the Christian worldview. So I've seen a lot of things, and there's a demonic presence. Like you'll see scratches on people's chests or wherever. That's 3 of them. You'll hear knocks that are 3 knocks. You'll hear a lot of things, see a lot of things involving the number 3, which is the Trinity.
Okay.
And the Trinity is an inherently Christian theme.
Right.
But since it's being used in that particular content, it's a mocking.
Okay.
So basically, I think the context of this was a mocking of it.
No, I totally agree that it was a mocking of it.
But if it's a Christian song no matter what, then it can't be used as mocking no matter where it is. It is Christian, it is Christ affirming.
Maybe. Let me develop the point a little bit further. Okay, so like Brett really brought out the point well, that the lines between sacred and secular are practically non-existent today. While songs that strictly fit the sacred category are practically non-existent. I mean, the only artist that really came to my mind that would fit this category would be Chris Tomlin, because he's stated pretty explicitly that he's writing songs for the church, for churches' worship catalogs. So that's probably like that was the only thing that came to my mind that would fit the traditional understanding of sacred. If the distinctions were redefined according to modern conventions, you get the Christian music industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, and like Brett has pointed out, and has pointed out, I think, pretty well, the question has to be asked if, like, the redefinition of the sense of sacred and secular, as demonstrated in Nicki Minaj's hijacking of O Como Come Emmanuel, is warranted or possible. But I still think, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think this is a good argument, but I think it's dies the death of a thousand qualifications, and so it's not an argument that I necessarily endorse. I do think that it does raise some really good points about grounding something's Christian status and another step beyond the product itself. So it's grounding it in the purpose of it rather than the product itself. And so, I mean, it definitely raises some interesting ideas. And I think that that there's still a little bit of truth to that idea. But I mean, I think Brett really did raise the real significant weakness of it, is that if this argument is true, then Nicki Minaj's performance of that was well, yeah.
And another thing, I think I'd feel like I needed to raise up, if someone, let's just say instead of Christian sacred, if someone says, "I want to listen to sacred music," well, in that case, I really hope every time you listen to music, you're sitting down and you're honestly glorifying God with every single note. If
Okay.
you're just sitting there listening to it for something as a background sound, as something to run to, as something to get the blood flowing, as something to calm you down for sleep, then how is that sacred music? You're just
Okay.
listening to something.
Okay, and that's another example of the lines between sacred and secular being blurred. Because I mean, when you look at the fact that Tomlin's, like, going back to Chris Tomlin, his songs are played on Christian radio, and so are the songs of other bands who are writing for the church and writing for worship, and they're written for everyday listening and everyday consumption and for other consumption. And if this argument, at least in the stricter form of the stricter understanding of sacred and secular, if you were to take the historical understanding of sacred and secular as it's developed in the history of music and try to force that on today, then it definitely wouldn't work. I don't know if you could take this argument and modify it for a modern day purpose, but even if you were to look at it historically, how it as valid of an understanding of it as it is, it doesn't work today because of the fact that, like you said, that if you're going to be listening to sacred music, you would have to be complying with the purpose of it, which would be during, a religious service, a religious situation.
Or, I mean, personal religious experience.
Yeah, which, prior to the Protestant Reformation,
Didn't really
happen. Didn't really happen. So, yeah, okay, those are three arguments on Christian music. Maybe you've heard them before, maybe you haven't heard them before, maybe you have your own arguments for or against them. But we just wanted to mention those particular three because, like we talked about at the start of the episode, this is a question and an issue that does matter. It impacts discipleship. It impacts our ability to. It's an unnecessary stumbling block to unbelievers in a lot of times, and it gets in the way of things in ways that it shouldn't if Christian music doesn't actually exist. And so, just to stress that, what you believe about Christian music affects your understanding of God's creation. It sets the precedent for how you interact with culture. Lecrae's view of the existence of Christian music explains why he, had the number one Billboard album back in September with Anomaly, and why he's doing so freaking well. The Christian music industry's understanding of Christian music is why they're still stuck, basically.
Yeah.
So it affects how you interact with culture and how you make disciples as a Christian. I freely confess that in my high school days, when I was not mentoring per se, but had an influential role in the lives of some younger Christians, that I myself was like, you should only listen to Christian music. You shouldn't listen to secular music. That's not just a theoretical thing. That's something I've done myself, and I know others have done as well. So, because it impacts discipleship, I think it's a very important question to talk about. And I mean, we didn't cover every stone. We'll probably be able, some point down the road to maybe revisit this topic with some new ideas, some new arguments, some new things that we've picked up along the way. But for now, I mean, we're strongly convinced by the first argument. The first argument is probably, at least for me at the moment, is very, very strong in my mind, even with the objection that is against it. But if there was something that we talked about that you didn't understand, or you need some clarification on something, or you think we are wrong and you want to try to explain why you think Christian music exists, or give your own argument as to why it doesn't exist, hit us up. Like I said earlier, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Twitter, you can send us an email. We would love to be able to clarify things if something we said didn't make sense. We'd love to be able to answer your questions if you have questions. And yeah, don't hesitate to hit us up on this, because I mean, this is obviously an important thing to us, and if it's something that's bothering you, we want to be able to help. Okay,
This was an interesting episode.
it was definitely an interesting episode. Oh my gosh, Brett, let's start closing this thing down. You got any recos this week?
Well, since I won't actually be here for the actual Thanksgiving episode, I'm going to go ahead and recommend dark meat turkey. Okay. I will affirm dark meat is the best part of the turkey for sure. White meat is just too dry, too bland, too tasteless. Dark meat is
No,
very moist, very delicious, full of flavor.
I've had some white meat that's pretty good.
But generally speaking, white meat is drier and more tasteless than dark meat.
Okay, generally yes, but I mean,
And a lot of times, white meat isn't done that well. So, dark meat.
My parents do white meat amazingly well. My parents make amazing turkeys. I am going to disreco, because we haven't done a disreco in a while. I'm going to disreco Gaddy's Pizza, which I've never been to Gaddy's up until Friday when me and my coworkers and their families, we just decided an impromptu lunch buffet at Gaddy's, and I'd never been there, and it was the last time I will ever go there. The pizza was pretty much, I mean, I fully believe that it was pre-made, frozen, shipped on a truck, and just reheated and served to us. It was disgusting. It was tasteless. The crust was awful. It was terrible. And even my main coworker, who's loved Gaddy's his whole life, was like, "Yeah, this is actually pretty bad. Like, they've changed something, and this is not what it used to be."
Maybe it was just a bad day.
Maybe, but I never will be eating there again unless there's a really, really strong situation that convinces me otherwise. It was awful. It was disgusting. I don't want to make any comment about the games. I didn't go play the games. We were just there for lunch and 30 minutes, and then went back to work. For all the games the games might be fine. I would probably play them, but I wouldn't eat the pizza. So that's my disreco this week. Yeah, wow, we're at an hour and 13.
Wow.
We definitely talked it up this episode.
Had a lot to say about Nickelback and One Direction.
My gosh, can't believe we did that.
Yeah, and you bashed me for liking My Little Pony.
That's a whole nother game. But seriously, thank you, Brett, for taking time out of your week to do this really silly show with me, and for sacrificing your brain for listening to Nickelback.
No problem. I will not be listening to that album ever again.
Yes, you've made several sacrifices for the show, and this was
Yes.
definitely the one sacrifice that trumped them all. So thanks for doing this with me. I really appreciate it, and we always want to take time to talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ at every episode, because the gospel is what drives us to do this show at all. The gospel is the foundation for the things we say. The gospel is the foundation for the questions we ask. And so when we're talking about the existence of Christian music, we're not doing it as a detached thing from the rest of the Christian walk. We're trying to do it and link it back to the gospel, which is why we tied it back to discipleship. The gospel saves us so that we may go forth and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything Christ has commanded. And it's important to know what Christ has commanded, and it is important to know what Christ has not commanded. And nowhere in the scriptures are we commanded to listen to only Christian music. And so it's a modern question that we have to deal with in the discipleship process, but it's one that the gospel reminds us that our works do not save us, and so listening to Christian music is not an issue of salvation. It's not an issue of righteousness that we can pin before God as if our works merit salvation. They don't. If you listen to Christian music your whole life, you're no more worthy of salvation than someone who has never listened to a Christian song in his whole life. So the gospel is the message that drives the whole show, that drives the whole Another Ascending Lark enterprise. It drives mine life and Brett's life. And it also drives the way we think about music. And as imperfectly as we are in handling some of these subjects sometimes, we want to get our hands dirty because of the gospel. The gospel demands that we get our hands dirty sometimes on these things because they matter. And so we always want to take time every episode to try to link, if we don't make it explicit how the gospel relates to what we're talking about, to make it explicit, like how the gospel ties into it. So yeah, like I said earlier, Brett, you're not going to be here next week. You will definitely be missed, which means I will be free from My Little Pony references for a week.
I'll instruct Aaron to put in at least one.
Yeah, next week, our good friend Aaron Reyes, who's worship leader at the church Brett and I attend at, will be joining us in light of Brett's absence. Brett's going to go see his family. We're going to talk about artistic worship versus congregational worship. We talked about that subject a little bit a couple weeks ago, and we're going to have someone who's actually a worship leader of a church come and help give some practical insight on that struggle, because I know it's a struggle that he deals with as well. So if that's a subject that interests you, definitely check back next week after you have woken up from your food coma and you're returning to work semi-conscious, not having stuffed your entire square inch of your body with dark meat. Yeah, I know you will. You're going to come back and you're going to be like 20 pounds heavier.
Hopefully.
Get some meat on those bones.
Hey, I have a belly.
Thank you for listening again. Like I said, you can get in touch with us on Facebook at Another Ascending Lark. AAL blog is our Twitter handle. You can send us an email at anotherascendinglark@gmail.com and check us out online at anotherascendinglark.com. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving. Y'all eat a lot of food. Y'all be thankful for what you have, and don't kill anyone on Black Friday. And we will see you next week.